Hey folks, I'm just leaving CrossFit. We're going to ExperiencedDevs subreddit. This one is a topic about how to navigate a role that the expectation is to be a self-starter. And so kind of skimming through the post. Again, I like talking about these things generally sometimes, and in other situations someone has like a very specific set of circumstances. But I think this one's good to talk about in like a general sense. But what they describe in their post is really like they're coming from an environment where they used to have like all, even though it was more called like, agile, quote unquote, there's a lot more structure. So more like sprint ceremony style stuff, like retrospectives. Say what you want about whatever sort of software development methodology you're following or trying to stick to, but basically they have some structure around that, right? Regardless of whether or not you agree with it, there's some structure. And it sounds like in their new setup, they're kind of describing it. It doesn't sound like they're complaining about it, by the way, but they're describing it as like there's just no structure. And it seems like everyone's motivated to be, or encouraged, I guess, incentivized to be self-starters, autonomous. They're saying that a lot of people that they work with really do value the fact that they have a ton of autonomy. But this person's kind of struggling with it. And they're saying like, hey, look, like I just had my performance review and kind of seems like I gotta get things changed up here because like I am being told I'm not moving fast enough, like don't really know how to navigate this. And I thought this would be cool to talk through because it's just like I feel like it's a good example of just like different places operate differently. And, on this idea of like, this might sound like kind of a cliche setup where it's like, oh, this person took a job at a small company, you got to be self-starter, you got to be motivated, you got to, you're probably in your mind, if you're thinking about some of the cliche things, inventing the rest of the statements that go along with that, right? Like, got to work your, 60 to 80 hours a week, got to, like, it's just, sometimes we think about these things based on, I don't know, stereotypes and generalizations we've heard. And I feel like for me personally, I hear a lot of, oh, we're a startup, we're a family, everyone's got to be a self-starter. Like, again, fits into this stereotype. This person doesn't seem to be like anchoring to that. And so what I was thinking about in this case was like, I do think there are places, and maybe this is one of those places where like they do create an environment where like you can be successful as a more autonomous self-starter kind of person. And there are also places that say this kind of shit and literally you cannot operate this way. Oh, come on, people, why are we going such weird speeds? So, they'll say like, oh, you need to be self-starter, blah, 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 because like they're just dropping it in their job postings because they think it sounds sexy or something. And then you start working there and then it's like, your manager or leadership or whatever, even just your teammates, like there is not a autonomous self-starter kind of environment. So you're like, okay, I'm being told I have to be, take on, have initiative, take on things, be a self-starter. And like, anytime I try to do this, people just shut down everything I do. And you're like, okay, well, what the hell, man? Like, what am I supposed to do to be successful here? So I think we get a mix of this kind of stuff. And my understanding from reading this particular post, at least, is that this person doesn't seem to be indicating they're in such an environment where it's they're getting mixed signals like this, right? Especially because they say, look, I have colleagues that, people seem to appreciate this kind of autonomy, right? I think it would be different if they were making a comment saying like, no one has this kind of autonomy, like everything's falling apart, mixed signals, this kind of stuff. It just doesn't sound like that. So, I think one of the comments that I read, at least, someone was saying kind of like, some people thrive in this kind of situation, others don't, right? And I do think that this is true, and I don't think that that makes you better or worse, but I do think that there are people, and maybe this is based on where they're at in their career, this kind of thing, that like you need structure and you need tons of it, right? Like you can be effective, but like someone's got to put up the guardrails for you, and they say go down this path, and you're like, no problem, I got this, and you do an excellent job. And I think that there are other people who like hate that, right? Like I'll give you an example. For me, early in my career, I didn't even think about this kind of stuff, right? I don't know a lot of people that necessarily do this kind of reflection and introspection, but like I certainly did not. Just complete transparency. I don't talk about this stuff like this is how I always thought about things. Like a lot of this stuff is just like me reflecting over, years and years of, of doing this kind of thing. But in the beginning, no, I had no idea, right? I found a startup that I wanted to work at, seemed really interesting. It was early stage. We didn't have to worry about like going paycheck to paycheck and not getting paid kind of thing. Did I think that it was, because I'm going to have so much autonomy here? Like, no, I had literally no idea about how I work effectively. And something I like realize in hindsight is that I feel like I had a really good environment to have autonomy. I was given a lot of trust to have said autonomy. Right? Because it's one thing for someone to say, hey, we want you to go do this kind of thing, take initiative, find opportunities. It's one thing for them to say that. It's another thing for them to give you that kind of room to do that. And I had both. And, I probably didn't realize it at the time, especially in the early days, but like, I certainly had both. And for me personally, that worked really well, right? If I think about my career professionally since then, even in internships, right? I had internships where I was given full trust. I remember I went one place to work on operating room AV equipment and how to integrate that into like a control panel, starting from scratch as the only developer, an intern. And I went back there for a second internship. And why did I do that? It's because they gave me full autonomy. They said, like, here's the devices we want to integrate. Here's the direction we need to head. But, like, go do it. Like, go have fun. And, again, reflecting on that job, the parts that were, the worst parts about that job were when I would get asked to do kind of silly things like, we need you to print out all the source code. And I'm like, I can do that, but that seems like there is literally zero benefit, right? I remember being told by my manager, who I don't mean this in a condescending way, so I apologize, but like zero software development background at all. And I remember he said, like, I need you to put together like an architectural diagram. And I remember being like, okay, no problem, but like what do you need captured? Like, at what level are we talking? And I'm an intern, right? Like I'm not working with other developers. Like what do you actually need this for so that I can give you what you need? And I just remember there were some asks like this where I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. And the person asking for it also can't explain it. So it puts me in this spot where I'm like, you're asking me to do something that I don't really agree with or believe in. So you're setting me, now you're trying to put me on this path and I don't align with it, right? That was probably the worst part about that, right? If I think about other parts of my career where it's been crappy, it's when I'm most disengaged, right? Is when people take away autonomy, especially if they have the expectation that you have it. Okay, like in my career so far, like most of my career, like professionally, has been managing engineering teams. And I have been in multiple situations where people will say like, hey, you're the one leading this team. like you're supposed to be setting the direction for this stuff. Okay, no problem. And like, here's your charter, here's the mission of the team. Okay, no problem. And then I start to do that, and it's like, oh yeah, but no, we're not doing that. Oh, no, like that's not a good idea. We shouldn't. And it's like, well, or someone else coming in to try doing that. And this happens in many different ways, right? Whether that's leadership, whether that's call them like air quotes, like a peer, and essentially taking away the autonomy. It could be different roles, like product managers have had this happen before, where it's not a collaborative effort. It's like kind of taking away input. So it's like, okay, you need me to have autonomy. That's the expectation. I cannot do that because you've taken away my autonomy. That feels bad. So I learned this about myself, that I need autonomy. I need a direction to be put in, right? Tell me what direction to go in and give me autonomy, and I will go. So if I were to imagine myself now going into a environment like this person's describing, where it's like, need to be a self-starter, need to be able to thrive in an environment like this, what does that mean for me? Well, first of all, I better feel like I'm aligned to what we're doing, because that would be a deal breaker for me. And for multiple reasons, but in order for me, knowing what I know now about myself, my throat's so dry. In order for me to be effective in a role where I need to be a self-starter, I need to be interested in it. If I don't feel like passionate about what's going on and like interested in what we're building or trying to solve problems for, it's going to make it really difficult for me to be a self-starter. And then the other ingredient is like, they need to prove through action that, and not just like saying it, right? They need to be able to prove that the environment is conducive to that. If it's not, even if I am passionate about it, it's going to feel like it's falling apart, right? I will not thrive in that environment. And I know this about myself now. So I need those two ingredients. I need to be interested in the topic, and I need to be given the environment where I can do that. And that's mostly it, right? So if I don't have those things, I won't thrive that way. Now, what does that mean for other people though, right? Like, say you get those ingredients, or for yourself, it looks slightly different, right? You're not me, that's fine. Maybe you're like, I'm just making this up, right? Pay's got to be really good, because that's your primary incentive. Like, pay's really good, and I don't know, like maybe same thing, like environmentally, like you need to be given that space to be able to operate that way. Cool. Okay. Now you're off going to do your thing. Like, what does that actually look like? I think when I think about this kind of stuff, collaboration comes to mind. And I say that because if you have a whole team of people being told you need to be a self-starter, what you don't want to have happen is that everyone's like, okay, I was told, like, go in start moving, and I picked a direction, and now I'm moving in that direction, and everyone is going in completely different directions. Right? You can't have that, because that's going to be chaos. So there needs to be some mechanism to point people generally in the right direction. This is going to look different at different places, but I think sort of what's a requirement is there needs to be some level of collaboration, whether that's with the other developers on the team to make sure that as developers everyone's moving in the right direction, whether that's with other roles like product owners or whatever. Sorry, I need to move over lanes, and this big truck is not doing it for me. It's two big trucks, one that I just passed and one that was not giving me space. Sorry, one more lane here. Okay, so yeah, I think the collaboration part needs to happen. That also means like if you're getting stuck, this is a tricky spot. You need to be able to like find the sweet spot, and this I feel like there isn't an exact science behind this, between like getting stuck and knowing when to ask for help. Okay, like you can't be in an environment like this and like anytime you are like, I don't know the answer to this, immediately you're like, okay, someone help, because now you're taking away the autonomy from other people, like they're getting disrupted. So there's that, balanced with the idea that like you can't just get stuck and try to go problem solve on your own for like 2 months when it's like, oh, you just have a local compilation issue with your checked out code. Like, did you try doing this and like solves the problem instantly? So you gotta find that right balance, right? Of like time boxing things, making sure that you can do a little bit of your own investigation, knowing when to ask for help, knowing what types of problems to spend more time on, right? So I like the example of like talking about local compilation errors. If you were to go spend a month investigating this, do you actually like, and it's not a facetious question, sorry, do you believe that coming back to the team and being like, hey, I learned this about solving this problem after a month, do you feel like that's a benefit to the team? If not, I would say like you probably want to minimize the amount of time you spend on that. Whereas if you were investigating, deep dive performance analysis of something, and like you don't have the answer right away, and that's going to take you a couple weeks to go do experiments and learn about something, like, yeah, sure, maybe someone else on the team, maybe there's an expert and you didn't know and they could have given you a hint and put you in the right direction sooner. Maybe. But the reality is if you spent time going to do this investigation, you might have a lot of interesting learnings to bring back to the entire team. So like there's this benefit of doing that, this benefit of spending more time. So I think knowing that balance and trying to like navigate that is really important. And again, like depending on what your colleagues are like and what your environment's like, you may find that it's frustrating for you if it's not fitting in that way. So this reminder from the beginning of this talk, it's not to say that you are better or worse depending on how you fit in these environments. It's like it might not truly be a great fit for you. And it might not mean like, oh, the company's terrible or that this is the best kind of company to work for. It's just different. And that's okay. Right? So if I just, to this person, if you're trying these things out and you're like, this is really hard to work this way, I need more structure, and like you're feeling this pressure, and then, unfortunately it gets to the point where they're like, look, like it's not working out for us, we got to let you go. I would just want to let this person know, like, hey man, that doesn't mean that like you're a shit developer. It might mean that like maybe you don't have the right experience for an environment like this. Maybe that type of working style just truly doesn't fit how you like to work right now or how you're effective at working right now. It doesn't mean that you can't work on that in the future. Doesn't mean that if you get a role somewhere else, like it's because you failed, like, nothing like that. It's just that this is a different way of working. Right? The self-starter kind of take on initiative thing is tricky because I think probably some people will struggle with this if they're like, okay, well, what direction do I head in? There's a million things we could do, and it starts feeling overwhelming. Yeah, what is the right answer? Right? This is where, coming back to collaboration, like, well, what's the mission of your team? What's the team's charter? You don't know? Okay, like, well, there probably is one, right? Maybe it's not written down, maybe it's not formalized, but like who would know, right? Like, does your manager know? If they don't know, then like who does know? Because probably someone in the company should know, right? Depending on how many teams there are, blah, blah, blah. I'm assuming in this case, small company, maybe it's only one team. Someone should know, and it should be your goal to go find that person to get the clarity on that. Because ultimately, I'm just making this up. If one of the most important things that your team is responsible for is like performance, and like you don't know this, and I'm not saying it's your fault, but like it just has never come up. No one said this. It's not in the team name or anything. But like that is the number one goal of your team. If you're like, cool, I need to be a self-starter, I need to be, take on, have autonomy, and no one has told you the focus, you might go, cool, I'm going to move in this direction. And then you're getting pushback, or it looks like the work you're doing is not valuable. And you might be like, well, what the hell do you mean? Like, you told me to be a self-starter, and like, this is clearly beneficial. And someone would say, look, man, like, we don't care. I'm just, again, making up random examples. Like, we don't care about minimizing our storage footprint. Like, that's the least of our concerns. We could 10x that and we don't care. But like, if you can save us 2% on our our throughput or on our latency or whatever, like, that's a huge deal. And you might go, oh, like, again, how could you have avoided that? Like, I think collaboration, right? Like finding the right people to talk to, getting alignment. So I think that's a really big part of it. And it will continue to show up in many different areas if you're operating in an environment like that. So I think getting clarity on what the team's charter is important. I don't think that should be a one-time thing. I think that should, especially if you have this many people moving in potentially different directions, like finding ways to constantly get alignment, I think is helpful. Things may evolve at this place, right? They said there's no ceremonies. Sorry. Okay, there's no retro, there's no, sprint end or sprint start, whatever. Cool. So what is the mechanism used to get alignment on the team? I'm not saying like it needs to be a retro, it needs to be whatever. It doesn't have to be anything, but like, any specific ceremony, but there should be a mechanism, right? There should be some kind of mechanism that keeps people generally aligned. Because if things are moving in different directions, with that many people being autonomous, like what happens if the team or the product or whatever, if the direction of things starts to move, like people should know. So you need some mechanism to keep people in sync. That could be communication from, someone leading the team. That could be a ceremony. That could be a whatever. But finding something to get alignment, I think, will help. So something to consider there, right? But overall, yeah, sorry, I'm just getting close to home here. Overall, I think there are absolutely environments where people can thrive this way. Like I said, I think early in my career, I didn't realize, but probably was in a situation mostly like this. And the growing pains is that company was getting more and more people that brought in. More like we needed to add more and more structure. And we had a lot of missteps, right? Like we had no idea what the hell we were doing. When I started there, it was like employee 7 or 8. And then it grew to like 250 people. Like we literally don't know what we're doing. But the one thing that I think we did really right was that we would try things. Oh my Lord, lady, come on. Woman's walking a dog and then like her dog's on this leash and just lets it run onto the street. Like as I'm about to pass. Oh, that dog was almost at its end. The thing that we did right, I think, was that we constantly tried things and we would say if it's not working. Right? I remember and this isn't picking on him at all, like one of my best friends to this day, I remember we were talking about like, sprint boards and stuff like that. And we had sticky notes literally on a whiteboard. And then we were talking about using Jira. I know everyone hates Jira. I actually really like Jira. But we were trying to, migrate to being more digital. And there was this period of time where it was like we needed on the sticky notes and on the Jira board. And it was like, why? Why are we doing this? And it was just like part of this transition and like figuring things out. And like ultimately, I think at the time that was just like comfort in tooling. If other people needed to like submit tickets for ideas, we didn't have the right mechanism for them to go into Jira and like go add in like a new feature request kind of thing that we would triage. We weren't there yet. So it was like we needed the whiteboard for that. And then like the, organizing priorities in Jira at the time was a pain in the butt because we didn't know what we were doing. So like if you had the sticky notes, you could literally physically reorder them and everyone could see that. It was just like, it was a weird time. But like we would try things and we would see what worked and what didn't. And I think ultimately that kind of process was something that just worked really well for us. So again, in this person's case, if you're in an environment like that, I think what would really help is finding opportunities to reflect on what is and is not working. I think retrospectives can be really good for that. I think that you can also waste a lot of time in retros if you're not focusing on the right things. And maybe these people don't want more ceremonies. So again, if you don't want a ceremony to do it, that's fine. I'm not telling you that you need it. I'm just saying that try to find a mechanism, whatever that is, that lets you get the same kind of thing out of it. So yeah, anyway, I think that was probably more thoughts on environments like this and maybe not advice for like how to be successful in them, but hopefully that still helps. So anyway, if you don't want me talking about Reddit topics, submit questions. I'll leave them below in the comments. Go to codecommute.com. You can submit questions anonymously. You can send me messages on social media. It's Nick Cosentino on LinkedIn. My profile is premium, so you can send requests. Should work. You can send messages on Twitter, which seems to be quite delayed because Twitter is terrible. Instagram, Facebook, I really don't check. Sorry. Where else? Blue Sky. Can you send DMs on Threads? I don't know. Anyway, pick a platform, message me. If I'm not responding, message me again. I do very much like making Code Commute videos. Like, I enjoy it because I don't have to spend time editing them or whatever. I just record them and it's kind of fun. So I would like them to be valuable, and that means that if you have stuff that you want me to try and answer, just get a hold of me. Yeah, social media is busy, but like I said, don't feel like you're bothering me. If you're like, hey, like I sent you a message, you haven't read it, like send me a message on a different platform then. It's totally cool. I'm happy to try and make videos for people that have questions. So we'll see you in the next one. Take care.